Good morning. We are live this morning. We're live with Dr. Michael Chavis. He's going to talk to us about managing instead of controlling our children. Now, a lot of us were controlling them when they were young. In the comment section, I'll be looking for those, and Michael will address them live on air. And if you are joining us via replay, thank you so much for doing that. Michael will not be able to address your questions live, but you should dialogue in the comment section with other people who are watching replays, because there's a lot of that goes on, and we appreciate you for that. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How's everyone?
Everyone, we're all fine. Everybody's, post-holiday weekend. I know a lot of people are out there kind of stretching like, oh, it's Monday, but it's not Monday. It's Tuesday.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your work and your background, and we'll jump right into why we should be managing our teens and not controlling them.
Okay. My work is in psychotherapy primarily. I've been a teacher for 100 years as well, and have taught psychology and social work and all that kind of stuff. I ran a children's clinic in Harlem for 25 years or more. I think it was 25 years. It might have been longer. It's scary when I think back about time like that. So I've had quite a bit of work with children and families, and hopefully some people have gained something from it, and those who haven't, maybe they found some help in some other way somewhere else. But I've been trying all these years, what is most important to me about working with children is that parents, and here I go with my blame game, so bear with me, that parents often ignore the fact that their children are children, and instead think or believe or want them to have all the skills and all the knowledge necessary to be an adult when they're only 14 years old. The expectation is that they're supposed to know because I told them. Well, yeah, you told them. And I'm sure you tried to tell them everything that should be told. But they're children. And even if they're adolescents, they're children. And being told something doesn't mean anything at all. My mother used to say, I told you. And the thing that was funny is, I don't know how I knew, but I knew I told you was not enough of anything. I just smile and go on and do whatever the heck I was already doing. Because talking is not it. Talking to your children, though people say you should talk to your children, you should tell your children these things. Yeah. But they aren't listening. They really aren't. They are hearing and not at the same time. It is in one ear and out the other. And the thing that's interesting about that is that you know it. You know it. And you get angry and you yell and you scream because you're not listening to me. Well, no, they're not. And the more you yell and scream, the less they listen. So what on earth is one to do? Well, listen to them, even when they're not doing as you ask them to. I just had, and somebody has a question, I hear it, but I just said to my grown 22-year-old, mind you, grown, he said something, and I said, you're not listening to me. And he said, I always listen to you. And I just kind of laughed. And I said, is that why your back is turned to me, listening to me? You always, what was it? You always point out behavior. Well, guess what? Behavior tells the story, doesn't it?
Yes.
My grandmother used to say, pay no attention to what's being said to you. Watch what's being done. Because, and this is her phrase, and she meant it, I mean, my grandmother taught English, but she meant this phrase. people will be to you what you let them be.
Yes.
And that includes your children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What is the difference between managing and controlling? In case
Managing is understanding where the behavior comes from and responding to that. Controlling is trying to tell someone what to do.
Okay.
For instance, here's one. I saw this in the grocery store the other day. Little kid had a little stroller, right? The kid's pushing the stroller. And she's pushing it really fast down the aisle. Zoom, she's going. I had to step out of the way. And the mother says, I told you to stop.
Been there.
and you know, having been there myself, I just kind of laughed. And the mother looked at me and said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, what would happen as I'm walking? We're going in opposite directions, but I'm speaking out loud. I said, what would happen if you grabbed the stroller, grabbed her, put her in the stroller, and pushed her? She wouldn't be running in front of you then, would she? And I heard her, the exasperation. I heard as if to say, I've got to do that. Well, she's a little girl. Yeah, you got to do that. Children exhaust us.
They do.
But the truth of the matter is that if we enjoy the exhaustion, it can be joyful. Because if you enjoy the exhaustion, you don't have to be tired. You may be exhausted, you'll sleep at night, but you don't have to be tired. Okay. There's a difference.
And how do we do that?
Well, I think by watching behavior, by calling them on their behavior. The other thing I said to my 22-year-old today was, this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then you tell me it's not working. Well, it's not working if this thing happened and you didn't manage that thing.
Yeah.
Then this other thing happens and you don't manage that thing. And then pretty soon it's all out of control and your hands are up in the air and it's not working. Is that how you got out of university? By not working? By not writing the paper and not writing the paper and not writing the paper and not reading the text and not enjoying discussion, then the things you do make it not work. The decisions you make it not work. It doesn't not work because it doesn't work. And that's true of raising children too. It's not, I was going to say it's not difficult to raise a child. That's a lie. We all know. But it's not difficult to pay attention to behavior. Yes. You pay attention to it all the time. It annoys you. You pay attention when it's annoying you. Pay attention before it annoys you. So here's my favorite. My youngest one, usually gets reprimanded when I'm putting dishes in the dishwasher. You know, he tends to sneak into the kitchen and I'm there and something's happened. Something's always happened, but I don't go after it when it happens usually. One, because I don't have time. Two, usually because I if it's annoying, then I'm annoyed and I don't want to have a discussion while I'm annoyed because that's going to get out of control. And either I'm going to yell or he's going to say something and I'm going to be provoked. And so why go through all that? So I tend to wait. I'm my mother's child. She used to wait until times were right, so to speak. And so do I. And I will plan my punishment a day in advance. And I call it punishment. It's probably not that at all. It is a reprimand and a statement about what can or cannot be done because there are consequences for behavior. So if you manage the consequences, you can manage the behavior. If your child, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I want to make sure everybody caught this, and you've planned ahead for what the consequences will be.
Yeah.
And have you communicated that? Should we communicate that to the teen?
Sometimes not. For
Okay.
instance, my youngest is 15 now. Sometimes I communicate consequences, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I simply say, you know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because there should have been enough experience built up that we don't have to have this long conversation about why you're being reprimanded and why this can't happen or why this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're bright enough to understand that. Yet at the same time, I may say if something untoward happens, tomorrow you wanted to do this thing, it's not happening.
Yes.
Well, what do you mean? I mean just what I said. No discussion. End of discussion. And I mean that too. Once the edict is laid out, we're not revisiting it because that's just a headache for me. And it's designed to give me a headache.
And if you keep changing your mind, there are situations in which you may need to change your mind. But if you have a pattern of changing your mind, then they don't ever take you seriously.
And not only that, you might as well laugh when you pose consequence.
Yes.
You might
I have a comment.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Patrice, and she made it a while ago, so I want to make sure it goes through. She says, you should talk to them, but also demonstrate the desired behaviors.
Absolutely. A young lady asked me, a patient of mine, asked me what my expectations of her were.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her I had none. She was absolutely incensed. And she said, what do you mean you have no expectations? My parents have expectations. My teachers have expectations. You're my therapist. You don't have expectations. No. Because you will make your own decisions. There are consequences for behavior. I'm asking you to learn to think ahead. If you think ahead, you have your own expectations. I can help you figure out how to develop expectations of yourself. And in time, you will discover that I do have expectations of you, but you're asking me to tell you what to do and how to do it. And you're old enough to make that decision yourself. It was a statement. It was, I think I said she's 14. She's not. She's 16. And she's talking about sex. And yeah, I absolutely think it's absolutely inappropriate for a 16-year-old to be having sex. But she needs to make that decision herself. And she needs the tools to be able to make that decision. I can help her have those tools. But if I, as an adult man, say to this girl, you should not be doing that, guess what she's going to go do?
Yeah.
She's going to run right out and have sex with this boy. And I would hold myself responsible for that. But if I give her the tools to make a decision, if I give her a fishing pole, she can fish. She can feed herself.
So what are the tools for decision making and how do we help them plan ahead?
I think this is the crazy part. The tools for decision making are logic and reason. And unfortunately, a lot of parents who have those skills, you have to have them to hold the job. If you're doing middle management, if you're doing any kind of work, you have to have decision-making skills. But we don't teach our kids how to make decisions. We expect them to already know. For instance, this is just one example. We don't teach them how to manage money. If you can't manage your money, you can't make any decisions about your money.
Is it safe to say that we can begin this process by maybe giving them choices?
Absolutely. And choices as early as 2 and 3 years old when you're in Toys R Us. You can have this doll, or I want this, and no, you get one thing. What do you want? Well, I want this, and I want one thing. I want this. End of discussion. One thing. Choose.
It's like a muscle we're building, a decision-making muscle.
Constantly building this muscle over and over and over. And it's not one time. It's not 2 times. It's not 20 times. I had a 22-year-old. I'm still talking about this.
Yes. Well, okay.
Yeah.
let's say we have a defiant teen,
Oh, my
and
favorite.
and maybe one making poor choices that are going to lead to perhaps danger, and we're very worried. It's not just that they're not cleaning out the doing their chores. How can we manage them rather than control them when we're very worried about the direction that they're going, and we feel like they need more direction and
Yes.
less choice?
It is difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but required.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I think you have to be provocative. I'm trained as an analyst, and I'm trained not to be provocative. I'm trained to sit quietly. It don't work when you got a kid out of control.
Yes.
So my thought is this: to begin a discussion that is initiated from the premise that I'm worried, I'm concerned, and you're making me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not so crazy that I'm losing it. And I know that there's something we have to do. I mean, taking it from that position right away.
Mm-hmm.
I have a kid who is smoking weed. And a lot of people would say, this is not my premise at all. I don't believe it. A lot of people would say, it's just weed, blah, blah, blah. It's not just weed. It's not. You can take it from that premise and operate from that premise. And that's okay if that's where you want to be. But that's not where I am. So this lady says to me, he's smoking way, way, way too much, and I've tolerated it, and I've tolerated, and now he's smoking in the house, and I told him he could smoke in the backyard. Well, why'd you give him permission to smoke in the backyard if he doesn't have permission to smoke? What are you saying? How do you do that? Well, no. See, you can't qualify it. You must be clear about what you want in your home. That's one thing. You must be clear about what your young child, from your perspective, is expected to do with his body. Because you are the actor of care. A 14-year-old, they're going to live forever. They're going to do everything right. They're going to do everything wrong, and they're still going to live forever. It is incumbent upon the parent to take charge of that without controlling and simply say, these are the circumstances. We need to talk about this, and we need to come to some resolution. This lady decided to ship this kid off to Pennsylvania. I'm in southern Georgia now, not in New York. But this lady decided to ship this kid off to Pennsylvania to a residential school. Well, I'm not going to solve the problem. Residential schools have weed too. What? And I suspect the kid is smoking because he's already feeling unwanted.
Oh, so that's not going to help.
It's not going to help. So she's pushed him away further because he's a problem.
Now, what if I'm a parent of teens and I've been using a controlling authoritarian methodology, and you've convinced me that I need to do more managing? What should I be doing to make that change? And how should I communicate it to the teens in my house?
I think you communicate it to the teens in your house by surprise.
Okay.
By opting or choosing a different approach. Mm-hmm. Now, that means that things will get wild for a minute because they don't know what to do.
Okay.
And so you let them get wild, and you kind of expect them to get wild. It feels like when you go from controlling to what looks more lackadaisical. It's not lackadaisical at all, but it kind of looks that way. Mm-hmm. It feels to them like the reins have been let loose and the horse is out of the barn. Well, not really, because there's a corral there. We've just enlarged the space.
Okay.
But that's difficult for the parent because the space is enlarged now. There's more in your purview. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, I used to teach sixth grade when I was just out of undergraduate school, and 25 people in a room is a lot of people when you first walk into a room. But that's kind of what it feels like when you let the barn doors open. It feels like you've got 25 instead of one, because they're all over the place. But the thing that's interesting about behavior is that no matter how much space there is, the behavior is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if the behavior is the same, you don't have so much more work to do.
You're still dealing with the same thing.
Still dealing with the same thing, and it's the same behavior. And excuse me, but it's in some instances when I'm having a difficult moment with them, it's the same a-holes.
Now, what problem with controlling is managing addressing? So when we switch, what change have we made? What benefit is there to the family?
You want to talk about anger.
Mm-hmm.
Controlling is all about pushing people to an angry place.
Okay.
You can't tell me what to do.
You're not the boss of me.
You're not. Oh, that's my favorite. As a matter of fact, some years ago, a woman who worked for me, I asked her to do some things, and she turned to me as if she were my daughter, and she says, "You're not the boss of me." And I just kind of smiled and said, "Yeah, I am."
In this moment, I am.
And that's true of your child too. I am the boss of you.
Yes.
But I don't need to go there, because you know it. The roof is over your head because I'm the boss of you.
Mm-hmm.
The food is on the table because I'm the boss of you. The clothes are on your back because I'm the boss of you. I don't need to say any of that.
Mm-hmm.
What I need to say is, you're the boss of you.
You're the boss of you.
Mm-hmm. You're the boss of you. However, there are consequences for behavior.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love that. You're the boss of you.
yeah.
And there are consequences for behavior.
Mm-hmm. And so go ahead and be the boss of you. This is extended thought. It's never has to be said. Go ahead and be the boss of you and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are consequences for behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't understand that, then you can say there are positive consequences for positive behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and there are negative consequences for negative behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Your choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is no need for further discussion, because you will impose what needs to be imposed.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you, my grandmother used to say, you don't have to like it. It just is.
It just is.
And life is that way. It just is. And in the process, you teach some things about how life is too.
Mm-hmm. What is the one thing that parents should get from this discussion? If we're, we've heard this and we get it, we're supposed to manage them, equip them to make choices, what we think are good choices, practice planning ahead with them so that they know each step affects a future step. What is the
stop arguing? Stop arguing and stop telling. Arguing and telling makes for anger. Mm-hmm. Instead, ask, what should you do next? Offer a suggestion. Well, I thought I would do this thing and this thing. Okay. Do you think that's sufficient? What might else be included in your thinking? So help them learn to think through problems as opposed to finding an immediate solution. Because the immediate solution may be a good one, but there may be better ones. Mm-hmm. But they don't know that there may be better ones if we allow them the simple solution. Sometimes the complicated solution is the best one because they learn more. And
sometimes they're more creative. Their solutions are more creative. They have information you don't have.
Yeah, listen. Mm-hmm. Listen. If you listen, the yelling and screaming stops. If you listen, the crying stops. If you listen, the slamming of the doors stop.
Mm-hmm.
You have a much more peaceful home.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen, curfew times are not broken. If you listen, the car gets back when it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. And also the consequences I've learned, because I've tried hard in all relationships to stop the arguing. It's unnecessary. And,
Yeah,
I feel it long afterwards, after the argument is over. But I find that the consequences, when we talk about teens, we often think that the consequences are negative consequences that fall upon themselves, but they don't necessarily have to be. And I'm sharing this one personal. I told my sons that I need them to meet curfew, and if they're not going to meet it, to tell me well in advance, not 2 minutes before curfew, because the consequence is that I worry.
Yeah.
The consequence is that I can't sleep. The consequence doesn't have to be that they're in a ditch,
No.
because the likelihood of that, we know the probability is small, but the probability is very high that I am worried, that I am stressed out, that I have elevated heart rate. And could you help me in this situation?
Yeah.
Because when I have all that, I've got to let it go somewhere, and I'm going to let it go on you the moment you come in the door.
Hit the door. The moment you hit the door, it's over.
Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing about that is, I know the moment you hit the door, it's over, and I'm now bothered enough that I'm sitting on the couch or in my chair waiting for you.
Yes. And annoyed that you have done this to me.
Done this to me. This. I tend to want to do it this way. I tell you a story first. Horrible story. Woman I know, or used to know anyway, locked her 16-year-old son out of the house in the hallway and forced him to sleep in the hall because he broke curfew too many times. Now, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. I would not have my child sleeping on the floor in front of my door.
Mm-hmm.
And now, that's just a matter of my own personal circumstance. I just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I understand her place and her frustration and her rage. But that's just it. Her rage was out of control, not his, her. And I tend to want to go in this direction and ask this question when they finally show up. Why are you trying to make me angry? What do you mean? Well, you're late. How do you feel when I'm late? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do know what I'm talking about. If I'm 5 minutes late, what do you do? What happens if I'm 5 minutes late? Well, I get mad. Well, what do you think I'm doing now? Well, you don't have to be. Why shouldn't I be? You said midnight, it's 1 o'clock. Why shouldn't I be mad? I don't leave you waiting. I don't leave you expecting. How do you get to do that to me? What makes you special? Yeah, you're my child, and I love you, and I respect you, but I do not respect this. This is not acceptable. Who do you think you are?
And it's okay to tell them what it is that's acceptable and not. And one of the benefits, and we're winding down on our time, so we're gonna end this in just a moment. But one of the benefits is, if you teach your children to respect you and to plan ahead and make good choices, it won't only be in their relationship with you; it will be in other relationships. The
world really expands once that happens.
Yeah,
and they have. They start to develop, I can't say they have because they're developing, but they start to develop a sense of internal peace because they know more about themselves and they know more about what they want. And there's one other thing, just one last thing. If you expect them to respect you, you darn well better be respecting them.
Yes.
Because it's a two-way street.
Yes. It's like the please and thank you with the younger ones. That, you have to model it and say please and thank you to them if you want them to say it.
Say it to you.
Yes. I love, my one takeaway is to stop the arguing and the telling. I still do the telling and ask and explain. It takes a little longer, but the benefit is everlasting.
Yep. And if you're explaining, be calm while you do it. Sometimes they ask a question and you answer it, and then they ask again, and because they want a different answer, and they ask again, and you get frustrated. No, don't go there. Say, I just told you. End of discussion. Feel yourself getting frustrated. End the discussion.
End the discussion. If you can, laugh.
Yep. If you can, laugh.
I see what you're doing.
Yep. My favorite phrase. I see you.
Thank you so much, Michael. This was very helpful. We had a lot of little hearts going up, so people have enjoyed the conversation.
Good.
I want to remind everybody that tomorrow is Wednesday. You're going to be off all week. That happens every time we have a holiday week, but tomorrow is Wednesday, which means it's coffee with Jen and Sharon time. So join us, same location, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. And Jen and Sharon will be talking about some form of parenting, some topic that is fun for everybody, or something that you have thought and wondered if other people have thought it too. Thanks again. I appreciate your being with us.
Good enough. Bye-bye now. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.